Hey, well, good evening. Doesn't appear to be anybody here. It may be another no comments happening situation. Or maybe I'm just not going out at all. Who knows? Who can tell? It's not very good at this. I'll just turn the volume up a little bit. Hugh's here. Right. Pete's here. Hugh's here. Excellent. Good evening, gentlemen. We seem to have liftoff. It's always a bit disturbing for the first minute because there's no way of telling whether anything is going on at all. And let me just get this little bit flappage out of the way of the camera. Yep, there we are. Right. We got lots of information about Pi Records today, taking off from where I was so rudely interrupted by Facebook at the 46-minute 30 mark a fortnight ago. Yep, lots of music, lots of information, lots of talking, and lots of singing. It only occurred to me about half an hour ago, I haven't set up any instrumentals for this session at all. Everything I've got is a song with lyrics to be sung, so it's going to be a bit of a singing night. Anyway, I hope you chaps are well. Good to see you here. I'm just carrying on in case a few more people arrive shortly. So that I don't get ahead with things like the introduction of the drinking utensil. But no, time is moving along, 2.5 minutes. Good heavens, that's like, oof. Going up to 3 minutes, it'll be 1/20th of the entire session. Yeah, it will, won't it? Right, okay. So, the drinking utensil. This week's drinking utensil is, it's the Wonder Woman mug. But more than that, it is the heat-sensitive Wonder Woman mug. And it's showing the design because I just made a cup of tea. Great. Glad that everything's going well, Pete. Excellent. Yeah, I made a cup of hot tea about 5 minutes ago. So it's currently full of hot liquid and showing up. I'm sincerely in hope that as I drink the liquid and as time passes and it cools down, the design will start to disappear and you'll see the rest of it, which is just the WW logo, not introduced in the comics until 1980, incidentally. Before that it was an imitation American eagle. And hopefully it'll just all turn black except for the logo, which is what it looks like when it's cold. Anyway, moving on. Quick sip. Tea this week because I'm trying to give up Diet Cola. I don't need to be drinking Diet Cola, and I'm not buying any more. I actually finished a bottle last time. That was it. From now on, cups of tea or cups of water. This time, a cup of tea. Oh, it's nothing like that first sip from a hot cup of tea. Who else is here? It's time to play the music. It's time to light the lights indeed. Phil, hi. I hope everything's okay with you. I hope everything's well. I hope you're well. I hope everything's okay. Is this a specific type of show? Well, it's not quite a Muppet show. I don't have two old men sitting over in the corner of the room hurling insults at the stage. Nor do I have a stage manager. It's just me. The Muppets will make an appearance as we go along because it's all part of the Pi story in the 1970s. But first, let's get started. Pi Records. Last fortnight, I was cut off right after doing Donovan's Mellow Yellow. Some people thought that it might possibly be that Donovan was objected to by the powers that be at Facebook. We will find out in a little while because I'm going to push it and do another Donovan song this evening. But yes, I started off, ran through the 50s and the early 60s when Pi's big stars were people like Lonnie Donegan and Petula Clark. Petula Clark, who in fact had started the whole thing off. Her contract through her own record company with Nixa Records was acquired by the Pi hardware company when they went into the record business, so she was really their first big star. That came to an end in the 70s, but I'm getting ahead of myself. To give a little taste of what Pye was like back in those days, I'll sing a song that I didn't get around to last time, and that is a big 1961 hit for Petula Clark, and it's called Sailor. As usual, we'll wait for the karaoke bit to do its 10-second silent intro, and I'll attempt to sing this down the octave. I can't sing it up Petula's pitch.
Sailor, stop your rolling. As you sail across the sea, all my love is there beside you. In Capri or Amsterdam, Honolulu or Siam, to the harbor of my heart I will send my love to guide you. As I call across the sea, come home to me. Sailor, stop your roaming. Sailor, leave the sea. Sailor, when the tide turns, come home safe to me. As you sail across the sea, all my love is there beside you. In Capri or Amsterdam, Honolulu or Siam, to the harbor of my heart I will send my love to guide you. As I call across the sea, come home to me. Sailor, sailor.
And there you go. Eileen had this on a 78. I was thinking one of your family probably had this. On a 78, wow, that's amazing, because it was as late as 1960, possibly 1961 that it was a hit. Being Pye, it's quite possible that it had been issued earlier and they just reissued it, because they did lots of that. A lot of what Pye reissuing things is a lot of what tonight is going to be about, in fact. So there you are, Sailor by Petula Clark. Note the structure of this, for those of you who weren't or don't particularly listen to song structures. It's perhaps worth pointing out here that it's a very, very simple song. In fact, it ends halfway through. It has a brief intro, one verse, one chorus, then an exact repetition of the same verse and chorus without even a change to the lyrics, and finally an outro. I'm describing that because, try and keep it in mind, I'll mention it again, it'll come up later on in a later hit for Pye, completely different piece of music, completely different concept, different genre, different everything, same song structure. Right, I was in 1966. In 1967, Pye signed Long John Baldry. Baldry was a respected veteran of the British blues boom. He was an associate of the Rolling Stones in their Richmond pub gig days. He was a member of Cyril Davis's All-Stars, and by the mid-1960s he was touring regularly with his group Bluesology, introducing new talent to the blues scene like Rod Stewart, for example, and notably pianist Red Dwight, who later adopted Baldry's first name and that of the Bluesology saxophonist, later Soft Machine saxophonist Elton Dean, to set up his own stage name of Elton John. So Baldry was a bluesman, but then he signed for Pye, and that went in a completely different direction. His 2 albums and a handful of singles for Pye consisted of big orchestral ballads, very mainstream stuff, not at all the kind of blues things that he's normally associated with. And when he had a hit, big chart hit in 1967, he quickly found that when on tour with Bluesology, playing mostly social clubs, the audiences wanted to hear his hit. But, according to Elton John, the band couldn't actually come up with a convincing way of playing them. So they'd simply leave the stage at that point in the gig and leave Baldry to sing along to a backing track. There is a legend in the business that the band said to Baldry, "We're not playing this nonsense." Fill in your own 4-letter word there. But according to Elton John in his autobiography from last year, or possibly the year before, that's not the case at all. Perhaps he's just being nice, who knows. Anyway, here we go. Here's that hit single that Bluesology either refused to play or couldn't play, and it is Let the Heartaches Begin. After, of course, 10 seconds silence. Time for a sip of tea. Still red. Start to play, and very soon they say I was a fool to give my love away. And with each glass of wine I feel a glow, and very soon I know I was a fool to let my baby go. So let the heartaches begin. I can't help it, I can't win. I've lost that girl for sure. The tears won't help anymore. So let the heartaches begin. I can't help it, I can't win. I've lost that girl for sure. Now she's gone, I can't hold back the tears anymore. I see the couples dancing through the night. They hold each other tight as they dance on along till the morning light. The soft embraces that they seem to share just make me feel aware of the loneliness I find so hard to bear. So let the heartaches begin. I can't help it, I can't win. I've lost that girl for sure. The tears won't help anymore. Yes, let the heartaches begin.
I just can't help it. You know I just can't win. I've lost that girl for sure. Now she's gone, I can't hold back the tears anymore. There you go. Not at all bluesy, more Tom Jonesy. And there was Long John Baldry with, or there was Long John Baldry and I with Let the Heartaches Begin. Emily, great to see you. I'm okay. I'm hoping that we manage to get a bit further this week instead of getting cut off at 46 minutes, or alternatively, I do a Donovan song and Facebook says, no, you can't do a Donovan song, and cuts me off, which may be what happened last week. Anyway, good to see you. Here's a drinking utensil, which you haven't seen. Here's the today's special drinking utensil is the heat-sensitive Wonder Woman mug, which is showing the design because it's got a hot tea in it. I'm hoping that as the tea goes cold, it will disappear, and then it just becomes black and the logo. Or I just drink it, or I just drink all the tea, perhaps. You can help with this. This week's Bat appearance is following the last week. This was last week's Bat appearance. I need to clear the screen so I can see if I'm making things visible here. Yes, here was last week's Bat appearance. Definitely a sinister Dark Knight 1980s Michael Keaton kind of bat duck. But here is a bag, and I think that's Lara's writing. Would you say that is that Lara's writing? I think that's Lara's writing, and it's from the Duck Store in Brighton. Here's the card to prove it. The Duck Shop, Duck Store, Duck Shop, Duck House, the Duck House. Fantastic, and as you might guess, it sells rubber ducks and it doesn't actually sell anything else. Oh, evening, Scott. Good to see you. Wonder Woman film on now too. Really? Okay. I saw the first one. I haven't seen the second one. It got such bad reviews that I thought I'd wait until I had absolutely nothing whatsoever to do except watch a film. So anyway, Wonder Woman mug, and here is courtesy of Lara, I think, in Brighton a number of years ago. Here is Bat Duck version 1, the 1960s Bat Duck. I can tell it's the 1960s Bat Duck because he's got early 1960s, 1950s, early 60s, because he's got his bat symbol on the front, but it is not on a yellow oval. The grey background, the light grey background is right. The yellow oval came in 1964, so it's pre-1964, and he looks much more cheerful really than the Dark Knight Bat Duck, the Michael Keaton Bat Duck. They've got the same bills, got bigger eyes. You see, that's the one with there's the yellow oval. Although I don't think Michael Keaton did that. Right, okay. So thank you to Lara, wherever she may be, for the Bat Duck. Took him away back in his little bag with all his wrapping. So yeah, Long John Baldry. Yes, apparently lots of people related the story about how Bluesology left him to sing that song to a backing track. I think the audience didn't care as long as he was singing his big hit, his number one with a bullet, so to speak. That's something that won't make any sense except to Frank Zappa fans. Right, okay, let's carry on here from Long John Baldry. Pye obviously had Baldry recording material that was intended to appeal to the older audiences, which in 1967 still dominated record buying. If you look at the charts in the late 60s, they're full of big ballads. That's what most people, kids haven't got the disposable income. I was buying 2 singles a year at that stage, and that was because I was getting Boots tokens from my grandmother, which was a 7 and 6 boots token, was just enough to buy a single. So that was it for me. I didn't have the disposable cash to buy much else at all. So Baldry was going there with Pye for the bigger audience of the time. Now Pye had initially tried the same sort of tactic with London beat group The Scepters, whose first single was a cover of a recent Shirley Bassey hit, I Who Have Nothing, in fact. By 1967, though, the band had changed their name to The Status Quo. They'd invested in lots of paisley shirts and colourful scarves and bright, possibly flared trousers, and with guidance from Parley House producer John Schroeder, a brilliant man, had successfully written a set of songs which tapped right into that slightly druggy, pastoral, nostalgic ambience of British psychedelic pop, which I love. There's nothing quite like it. Nothing quite like it. All kinds of characteristics. The sound of the harpsichord, the bassoon, the oboe, the woodwind instruments play the double reed woodwind instruments, that is, play a very important role in British psychedelia, and lots of, nostalgia for the past. Anyway, this song doesn't actually have any nostalgia for the past. It's The Status Quo's big 1967 hit. If I can find the right folder. Yep, there we go. And it is Pictures of Matchstick Men, with, of course, the obligatory break for me to take a sip of tea. Might play along to this.
When I look up to the sky, I see your eyes, a funny kind of yellow. I rush from the bed, I soak my head, I see your face underneath my pillow. I wake next morning, tired still yawning, see your face come leaking through my window. Pictures of matchstick men and you, mirages of matchstick men and you. All I ever see is them and you. Windows echo your reflection when I look in their direction. Doll. Then will the soft cheeks on your face, it just won't leave me alone. Pictures of matchstick men and you, mirages of matchstick men and you. All I ever see is them and you. You in the sky, with the sky you make them cry. Or you in the sky, with the sky you make them cry. Or I.
Truncated Pictures of Matchstick Men, one of a fine selection of psychedelic songs recorded by The Status Quo in 1967. Well worth tracking down. They don't progress much beyond that music, but beyond that kind of music. But there's lots of lovely, enjoyable music in there. Right. Pete's got a question about the recorder. Why do some finger positions on the recorder have 2 holes and others just 1? It is off topic from Pi, but I think you've got a thumb hole in the back, which may be what's puzzling you, and you use that to go up the octave. The fingerings are all kind of variable. I'll get round to this later on. Okay, right. Where are we at? 26 minutes, only 20 minutes till possible cut-off time. So I'm going to push it right now, and to finish off the 60s, I'm going to try and get another Donovan number through the internet filters. So if everything freezes in the next few minutes, thank you all for being here. It's lovely to see you, and I shall see you as soon as I possibly can. Hopefully we'll come out the other side of this in one piece and carry on with a bit of a talk about Pi budget labels. It's an excellent first album. I love all their Pi albums, Hugh. The Spare Parts is good, and then the more bluesy stuff on Head of Two Dog, Dog of Two Head, isn't it? Excellent quality recordings, and I will come back to that at the end if I have time, which I probably will, because I haven't set an end time on this. Right, okay. I'll get back to the recorder. So yes, Donovan, let's go. Once again, I think I have the obligatory starts. Yep, haven't tried singing. Oh, this is a bit quiet. Turn the backing up. Donovan, 1968.
Thrown like a star in my vast sleep, I opened my eyes to take a peep, to find that I was by the sea, gazing with tranquility. 'Twas then when the hurdy-gurdy man came singing songs of love. Then when the hurdy-gurdy man came singing songs of love. Hurdy-gurdy, 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 gurdy, he sang. Hurdy-gurdy, 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 gurdy, he sang. Hurdy-gurdy, 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 gurdy, he sang. Mysteries of ages past, unenlightened shadows cast down through all eternity, the crying of humanity. 'Tis then when the hurdy-gurdy man comes singing songs of love. Then when the hurdy-gurdy man comes singing songs of love. Hurdy-gurdy, 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 gurdy, he sang. Hurdy-gurdy, 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 hurdy-gurdy. Hurdy-gurdy, 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 gurdy, he sang. Hurdy-gurdy, he sang. Here comes the roly-poly man, and he's singing the songs of love. Roly-poly, 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 roly, he sang. hurdy-gurdy, 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 gurdy, he faded out. Hurdy-gurdy.
Right, now to see if we're still live. Are we still going? Have we frozen? I can still see my face moving around, but I could last week. Is anybody there? Patty Gurdy, right? Okay. Timing is absolutely everything, and I'm not sure that mine gets better. Lots of people use metronomes these days, especially since you'd be amazed how many metronome apps you can get on your telephone. But that doesn't really particularly help either, to play to a strict beat. It's very 80s. I believe it's why Danny Serafin, the drummer in Chicago, got fired by the band because he couldn't play along convincingly to a track. You're still here! Fantastic! Excellent! Wow, okay, the curse of Donovan did not strike this week. Right, let's, in that case, I shall move swiftly on, because there's plenty to be dealt with. Last week I mentioned Pye Golden Guinea, their 21 shilling label. And here again is a Pye Golden Guinea Kenny Ball and his Jazzmen album. And I mentioned Pye Jazz, but I skipped over a lot of. I didn't mention. I start again. I skipped over a lot of Pye's budget labels last time, so here's a bit of something about them. Golden Guinea started up in 1955, came to an end in 1974, presumably discontinued because after 1971, Pye Golden £1.5p didn't have quite the same ring to it. Who knows? But it still lasted as long as 74. The first of the really memorable ones, I think the really cheap ones, is Marble Arch Records, launched in 1964, and it was pretty much mostly devoted to budget repackaging of old recordings from the 1950s and the early 1960s. Although having said that, I believe that the first of a zillion Pye Kinks compilations appeared on Marble Arch in 1966 with the glamorous title The Kinks' Greatest Hits. It was also, Marble Arch also was used to cash in on the popularity of artists who had recorded for Pye but had left. For example, Vince Hill, ballad singer Vince Hill, had a brief spell of chart action in 1967. He'd been with Pye in the early 60s, 1960 to 61, and they promptly belted out a Marble Arch release of all the stuff he'd recorded for them to cash in on the fact that, you know, people would go, oh look, Vince Hill, he's in the charts. I like that single Roses of Piccadilly. Here's a cheap album, I'll buy it. That's pretty much how Marble Arch functioned. Another example, guitarist Johnny Winter was represented on Marble Arch by a double LP of recordings which he had made before he became, when he was still living in Houston, before it became a big success. And they were made for a former manager who kept the recordings and cashed in on Winter's success in the Woodstock era in the late 60s, early 70s, and in fact continued to cash in on them. They're still appearing on budget CDs as far as I know. I have this album. I couldn't dig it out. It's not accessible to me at the moment, but I do have a copy of the Johnny Winter story on Marble Arch. And it's actually rather a decent record. It didn't particularly suit me when I bought it back in the early 70s because it didn't sound like, it didn't have that big, rich, electric rock sound that Winters had developed by then. It's much more, in fact, it represents his singing rather than guitar playing, and a lot of very commercial blues arrangements in the kind of style that B.B. King was doing in those days. Nothing wrong with that. Winter was actually a very good singer, and it's a good take on a lot of blues standards. So one up for Marble Arch, purely by accident. They were able to license these recordings and went, well, Johnny Winter's in the charts, we'll put out an album and make a bit of money on the back of it. And you know, that to a large degree is Pye. I just want to make a quick mention. I haven't got any of these, and I would love to get them. There were only 7 LPs in the Pi Sacred series, which consisted of records of hymns and church music, which were presented, it says on the sleeves, by Steve Race, who some of you may remember. Steve Race was a popular light program DJ who in '67 went on to be one of the mainstays of Radio 2 in its early days. Undoubtedly he had nothing to do with the recordings apart from lending his name to attract people to buy these cheapo records of Methodist hymns and one of English choral music, modern English choral music. There's one which is mostly of pieces by Malcolm Williamson, who was a then obscure composer who went on to become master of the Queen's music. And also, the Sacred series contains a couple of LPs of Renaissance music, Christmas Renaissance music, and one of Monteverdi. Not that common in 1966. I would love to get hold of these. Right, moving on. In 1970, Pi launched the Dawn label. And it lasted until 1975 as an imprint intended for progressive rock and other less mainstream acts. The prog signings included an extraordinary band called Comus. Phil was lucky enough to see them and several other Dawn bands in a concert for a penny in Bristol in 1970, or was it 71? Comus's first LP doesn't sound like anything else you've ever heard. File under progressive rock because you don't know how else to file it. But it's an extraordinary thing. It's not easy. It's very intense, very very challenging kind of rock record, but well worth a listen because it's just absolutely unique. Dawn also had Titus Groan, who did some very nice jazz blues stuff. Blues rockers Jonesy. And Froop, or is it Fruup? Northern Irish band, turned out 4 albums on Dawn. Very, very classical, very much the classical side of progressive rock, with lots and lots of quotes from classical music, courtesy of the keyboard player, who apparently left the band shortly before they packed it in and became a clergyman. There you go, from rock to the church. The band name is spelled F-R-U-U-P. I have always thought of it as Fruup, although of course it may possibly be Froop. Who knows? Pop acts were also accommodated on Dawn. The label had several hits with Mungo Jerry, and in the mid-70s signed up Brotherhood of Man, who went on to win the 1976 Eurovision Song Contest. Wow! And I'm not going to try and sing that one. You'll probably be relieved. Modern Jazz got a look in. There's an album by John McLaughlin and various other people. The wonderful John Sermon, Stu Martin, Barry Phillips album, The Trio, splendid double LP, that came out on Dawn in 1970. Hard rock band Stray was signed by Dawn right at the end in 1975. Their next 2 LPs were on the Straight Pi label after Dawn had folded, and where they'd been hard rock in the 70s, by the mid-70s they were more kind of orchestral arrangements, getting a bit prog, a bit adult-oriented rock. So a very varied label, very varied label. So here's the first. I'm going to sing the first of Dawn's hit singles, the Dawn Records number 1 hit of 1970, or was it 1971? I'm getting very vague on dates. Yes, I'm sure you'll all know this one and probably not like it very much, but I'm going to do it anyway. Here we go. Now listen to the structure here.
Summertime, when the weather is high, you can pick right up and touch the sky. When the weather's fine, you got women on your mind. Have a drink, have a drive, go out and see what you can find.
That's terrible.
If your daddy's rich, take her out for a meal. If your daddy's poor, just do what you feel. Lead along the lane, do a tunnel 25. But when the sun goes down, you can make it good in the lay-by. We're not great people, we're not dirty, we're not mean. We love everybody, but we do as we please. When the weather's fine, we go fishing or go swimming in the sea. We're always happy, lives for living, yeah, that's our philosophy. Sing along with us, dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee, da-da-da-da-da, yeah, we're very happy, da-da-da-da-da, dee-da-da-da-dee-da-da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. All right. When the winter's here, yeah, it's party time. Bring a bottle, grab your bright clothes, it'll soon be summertime. Well, we're singing again while both track of the lyrics will be settle down. Sorry about that. If she's rich and she's nice, bring your friends and we'll all go to town.
Motorbike.
Summertime, you can stretch right up and touch the sky. When the weather is fine, you got wind in your mind. Have a drink, have a drive, and go out and see what you can find. If your daddy's rich, take her out for a meal. If your daddy's poor, just do what you feel. Let go along the lane, do a tunnel 25. But when the sun goes down, you can make it good in the lay-by. And we're not great people, we're not dirty, we're not mean. We love everybody, but we do as we please. When the summer's fine, we go fishing or go swimming in the sea. We're always happy and lives for living, yeah, that's our philosophy. Well, sing along with us, dee-dee-dee-dee-dee, da-da-da-da-da, yeah, we're happy, da-da-da-da-da, dee-da-da-da-dee-da-da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. All right.
And there you go, big hits, still gets reeled out in the summer. I imagine Ray Dorset, the writer, has been living off it for years. I like Long-Legged Woman Dressed in Black as well, although it's not really Mungo Jerry. I mean, they started off as a skiffle group, essentially no drums, guitar, banjo, and sort of hand percussion and people going. By the time of Long-Legged Woman Dressed in Black in '75, they turned into a rock and roll band. And it's perfectly good as rock and roll. It's not necessarily peaked. Was that the great age of the bubblegum genre in music? I suppose it was. I think of it as the early What No Cider Drug. Thank you, Mark. Good to see you. Unfortunately, I have neither a drug nor cider. I've only got a plastic measuring jug. I did do the bit at the beginning in imitation of the drug. So yeah, drug band. Bubblegum, it's certainly the era of bubblegum. Was that part of it? Who knows? And England, I think that's more kind of like it's part of the transition towards glam rock, which is kind of a strange thing to say about Mungo Jerry, but there you go. Anyway, I did want to say that cutting back to what I started with, the Petula Clark song, Mungo Jerry there basically employed exactly the same song structure as the writers of Sailor did for Petula Clark's hit 10 years earlier, which is, intro, first verse, chorus, break. There's one little extra bit added on. Apart from that, break, and then just repeat the record again until the end. Exactly the same structure, totally different kind of music, different genre, different everything. as a structure, I suppose if it isn't broke, there's no need to fix it. Maybe that was the kind of thinking involved. You know, it's a successful pop formula. Keep it going. Right, 1971. Another label saw the launch of the Golden Hour of label, which served the same kind of purpose as Decca's contemporary The World of series, slightly pricier repackaging than Marble Arch, with a longer playing time, covering anything and everything in the Pye back catalogue and anything that had been distributed by the company, in fact. Country Joe and the Fish and Joan Baez, for example, were two American acts who had not been on Pye, but the company at that time had a distribution deal with the American label Vanguard Records, for whom they recorded. So they turned up with compilations on the Golden Hour of album. The titles could be, and often were, adapted to fit any purpose. I particularly love Golden Hour of the Planets, which is simply a reissue of Adrian Bolt's and the LPO's 1950s Nixo recording of Adrian Bolt of Holst's The Planets. Phil, Flipside, Dust Pneumonia Blues. Actually, I've got this in hand, and my copy has Dust Pneumonia Blues on the flip, and In the Summertime, followed by Mighty Man on the A side. Let me see if I can get that up there. Yeah, I've seen mentioned on the internet. People cite this as the very first maxi single, which was the 1970s answer to the EP. People weren't making EPs anymore, but people were making maxi singles. Quite what the difference was, I was never able to tell. But this is alleged to be, in 1970, the very first English maxi single. There's you can see the Dawn logo at the top there. Yep, Dawn Records. Right. Keep saying right a lot as a transition. Yep, the great set. I actually got that single. That single was given to me by a short-lived girlfriend. I wonder where she is now. Whoops, get me text up again. I can't do anything with that. Right, so between 1970 and 1974, nearly every major act on Pye's books either left the label or was dropped. The Kinks moved over to RCA in 1971, Status Quo to Philips Records' new prod label Vertigo in the same year. Donovan initially got shunted over to Dawn, but by 1973 he was appearing on CBS. Even Petula Clark, Pye's first major signing, in fact, when she was with Nixo Records when Pye Hardware Company bought and got into the record industry. Even Petula Clark, who was going through Pye via her own publishing label, Polygon Records, she moved over to Polydor in 1974. I do not know the reason for this. I'm not able to account for it. Did the artists realise that times were changing in the business and feel that Pye's are notoriously quick and cheap methods? This is a company that does a lot of repackaging, bear in mind, and tended to record as fast and cheaply as possible. Did artists feel these methods were no longer appropriate? Or did the company simply drop artists who it felt were moving into areas which they didn't consider to be of value? There is evidence in the histories of the Kinks and the Searchers suggesting that Pye had relatively little interest in LPs. This wasn't unusual in the industry prior to the gradual emergence of rock concept albums or unified albums, Sgt. Pepper, all that kind of thing. We talked about that a few weeks ago. But most companies adapted to the production and marketing of new LPs during the 70s, often by bands such as Pink Floyd, for example, or Led Zeppelin, who for a long time simply did not produce any singles at all. The LP was the only product. It may be that Pye preferred to stick with the shorter records. confining those acts that were slightly off the mainstream and more interested in the LP format to the Dawn label. Speaking of the Kinks, here's the only Kinks single I didn't cover in the daily lockdown sessions the other week. The only major Pie one. It's almost their last for Pie from 1970, and if you were following that series you probably know what it is. And that's In the Summertime, which is not at all by the Kinks. Let's just change folder there. Here we go. Right, so I'm going to try. I met her in the club down in Old Soho, where you drink champagne and it tastes just like Coca-Cola. C-O-L-A, Cola. She walked up to me and she asked me to dance. I asked her her name, and in a dark brown voice she said Lola. L-O-L-A, Lola. La 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 Lola. I'm not the world's most physical guy, but when she squeezed me tight she nearly broke my spine. Oh my Lola. Lola, Lola, Lola. Well, I'm not dumb, but I can't understand why she looks like a woman and talks like a man. Oh my Lola. Lola, Lola, Lola. Lola, Lola, Lola. Well, we drank champagne and danced all night under electric candlelight. She picked me up and sat me on her knee. She said, little boy, won't you come on with me? Well, I'm not the world's most passionate guy, but when I looked in her eyes, well, I almost fell for my Lola. Lola, Lola, Lola. La 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 Lola. Lola. La 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 Lola. La 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 Lola. Away, I walked to the door, I fell to the floor, I got down on my knees. Well, I looked at her and she to me. That's the way that I wanted to stay, and I always wanted to be that way for my Lola. Lola, Lola, Lola. Girls will be boys and boys will be girls. It's a mixed up world of shook up world. They shuffle Lola. Lola, Lola, Lola. Well, I left home just a week before. I've never ever kissed a woman before. My Lola smiled and took me by the hand. She said, little boy, can I make you a man? Well, I'm not the world's most masculine man, but I know what I am. I'm glad I'm a man, so Lola. Lola, Lola, Lola. La 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 Lola. Lola. Lola, la Lola. La 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 Lola. Far too difficult a song to sing, but there you go. I tried it anyway. And as we are roughly an hour since I made the pot of tea. And yes, you're right, they changed the lyrics from Coca-Cola to Cherry Cola for legal reasons. That's correct, Pete, but they left it as Coca-Cola on the LP. Everybody knew what they were singing about anyway, I think. Cherry Cola. Did Cherry Cola exist in England in 1970? I'm not sure. Anyway, far too hard a song to sing. And, as you'll see, the tea has gone cold and the pattern has disappeared from the heat-sensitive Wonder Woman mug, and you've just got the black mug and the logo. Fantastic. Getting very close to 9 o'clock, but I'm going to carry on because I've still got a heck of a lot of stuff I'd like to look at. Get rid of that. Pick this up. And the label had a lot of success with dance and disco acts in the early to mid 70s. Barry White made a licensed appearance on Pliers in 1972 before his career really took off. But in 1974, they hit Thanks Jan, I love it, it's a good one. They hits with Carl Douglas and Kung Fu Fighting, and then two dance hits by Johnny Wakelin, both records derived from the same event, the 1974 Muhammad Ali George Foreman fight in Zaire. Lenny, hello, great to see you. Have you seen the heat-sensitive Wonder Woman mug? The heat's worn off. You'll have to watch the earlier stretches of the stream to see it with its red and blue bits. So yeah, Johnny Wakelin, two singles derived from the 74 Muhammad Ali George Foreman fight in Zaire. In 75, Pye signed up the Liverpool soul funk band The Real Thing. Two big hits followed, then a number of minor ones, which kept the band going with the label until the end of the decade. And here, moving swiftly on to the next song, is The Real Thing. Yep, let's give this a go. I see you laughing, Lenny Welsh, co-host. The 10-second break before the song starts. Here we go. Everybody disco. Strongly recommend getting up and disco dancing all over your living room or wherever you happen to be at the time.
I would take the stars out of the sky for you. Stop the rain from falling if you ask me to. I'd do anything for you. My wish is my command, your wish. I can move a mountain when your hand is in my hand. Words cannot express how much you mean to me. There must be some other way to make you see. If it takes my heart and soul, you know I'd pay the price. Everything that I possess, I'd gladly sacrifice. Oh, you to me are everything, the sweetest song that I can sing. Oh, baby, oh, baby. To you, I guess I'm just a clown who picks you up each time you're down. Oh, baby, oh, baby. You give me just a taste of love.
Oh, I've just learned this bit. Oh, you know you got the power, girl, to keep me holding on. So
now you got the best of me. Come on and take the rest of me. Oh, baby.
oh, the embarrassment. Finding a bit of the stuff that you've forgotten and you haven't dreamed of. Oh,
When you're close to me, we seem so far apart. Maybe given time, you'll have a change of heart. If it takes forever, girl, then I'm prepared to wait. The day you give your love to me won't be a bit too late. But you to me are everything, the sweetest song that I can sing. everything, the sweetest song that I can sing. Oh baby, oh baby. To you I guess I'm just a clown who picks you up each time you're down. Oh baby, oh baby. Oh, you to me are everything, the sweetest song that I can sing. Oh baby, oh baby.
Whoa. I've probably sung too much, to be perfectly honest. It's been that sort of evening, and we've got to 9 o'clock, and the Muppets are laughing, and then Hugh, and then the follow-up was an identical copy, absolutely. A slightly better copy, I tend to think. You're probably right, actually. I need to be up from my chair and frigging and shaking my booty, so to speak. No, I just can't get the high notes, to be honest. I've been singing for an hour and my voice is getting very rough. A couple of numbers to go, a little bit more material, skip a bit. Pi did a lot of licensing as well as repackaging material. They did a lot of licensing. An unlikely one in the 70s was the connection with Butter Records, run by Neil Bogart, who they licensed fairly early on, which is why you will find copies of Captain Beefheart's first album and Mirror Man on Pi. I have copies of both on Pi repackaged called the File series from the late 70s. Gladys Knight likewise turned up on Pi for the same reason. Bogart in the mid-70s set up a new company called Casablanca with Warner Brothers. He then bought the company back from him. Thanks, Emily. Take care. I'm carrying on for about 15 minutes, but take care. All the best. I'll keep going. Bogart's contract with Pi was renewed, and he arranged a distribution and manufacturing deal in the UK with them. For this reason, you will find the Pi logo on late 70s records, very small, tucked away on the label, but you'll find it there on records by Kiss, Donna Summer, and indeed Parliament. Although instead of the usual deal of Pi putting their own label on, it was added alongside the standard Casablanca label art and logos. Another mid-70s licensing success for Pi was the recordings associated with Jim Henson's The Muppet Show, which is where I came in tonight. Henson had signed the audio rights to Arista, a new American label run by former CBS president Clive Davis, which didn't at that time have foreign distribution. Pi acquired the license from Arista to release the material everywhere other than the USA and Canada, and saw the show become a global success. They must have done very well, I think, out of that one. They even pulled a single off the first LP and had a top 10 hit based on airplay of both sides of the disc. I did Halfway Down the Stairs, as sung by Robin, Kermit's nephew, a couple of days ago, and now here's the other one. I'm sorry about this, it's a bit of an earworm, you might end up stuck with it, but what the heck. And I haven't rehearsed it at all, which I don't think the artist did either, so here we have Animal solo record. Everybody sing along. Missed his little last line there. Hope you noticed the Animal. That was Animal, the Muppet drummer, who was the artist on that particular record. In this version, he stuck in a Animal version of Straight No Chaser by the great Thelonious Monk. Punk, New Wave. As far as I know, Pye did not sign any punk or New Wave acts. One of the few big companies who didn't go anywhere near that kind of thing at all. They signed the Fabulous Poodles in 1976 and Kilburn and the High Roads, both on the Dawn label. The Kilburns were probably as close as they got. That was Ian Dury's first group, featured Davy Payne, who went on with Dury to the Blockheads, who of course became a great success in the late 70s with Stiff Records. I mean, both bands were arguably part of the growth of punk, but only really as predecessors. The Kilburns were just as much tied up with 70s rock. They'd opened for The Who on the 1970 Quadrophenia tour, which sticks in my mind because I tried and failed to get a ticket for that at Manchester's Bellevue. But punk seems to have passed Pye Records by, or perhaps it's the other way around. But if anyone knows of any exceptions, if you can identify a punk record on Pye, please do let me know. I can't think of one, and I can't find any notes of one. Quickly now, a late signing for the company, right at the end of the 70s, was Georgie Fame, 1960s blues boom great Georgie Fame, who turned out a disco single and showed more interest in reggae than in the sharp, jazzy blues work of his characteristic of his 1960s career. An exception brought to my attention by Hugh, thank you Hugh, is a fine acidic performance of a song written for him by Elvis Costello. Hugh thinks I should try singing it. I don't feel confident enough at this point to have a go at it. Perhaps I'll try it another time. It's in the list, it's there. I will attempt to have a go at it, get the lyrics down, attempt to work it out. Right, getting to the end. In 1980, Pye ceased trading under that name, changing it instead to Precision Records and Tapes, catchy, often known as just PRT, because that was the logo which appeared on their record labels. PRT continued to repackage and re-release the Pye back catalogue and retained the distribution deals with Butter and Casablanca. Also picked up the UK distribution deal for Sugar Hill Records. So Pye got themselves a little bit of a slice of Grandmaster Flash and cohorts. New acts continued to be signed to PRT, and some old ones. Colin Blunstone, for example, from the Zombies, was with PRT for a bit in the early 80s, but no noticeable major successes. It's as if the company had lost its ability to spot talent. Or perhaps it was simply that after the punk era, so many more record labels had entered the market that the competition was simply too stiff. Certainly for a company which could in any case afford simply to keep on mining a massive and very varied back catalogue. And there I reached the end of the Pye story. We're coming up, I've just got time to sing one more song, and I'm cutting back to 1970 and really one of my favourite songs, perhaps my very favourite song by Pye era Quo, I'm missing lots of comments here. Can't see them. I'll come back to them later. Yep, back to 1970. Really love this one. I'll attempt to do justice to it. I might even try to play along with it, though that probably won't help to do justice to it. and it's Status Quo by 1970. They dropped the and become Status Quo. So to finish up tonight, here is Quo with In My Chair.
I saw her talking now, my ears were burning, my feet stopped walking now, they started turning, my eyes were half open, but she didn't see me there. We ran along, walked across the rooftops in my chair. Had a car in my pocket and we started moving. The man in a helmet said, "What's that you're using?" My eyes were half open, but we didn't see him there. Put the car back in my pocket and I'm still here in my chair. My teeth were laughing now, we couldn't stop smiling. We danced to the mystery band without even trying. My eyes were half open, but we didn't see them there. Ran along, walking past the rooftops in my chair.
I'll put the unprotected saxophone ending on. There you go. Quo, In My Chair. Wonderful, wonderful record. A firm favourite of mine. And that's it. There we go. Right, okay. Dog of Two Head, well worth it. You can get all of the Hugh. You can get all. There's an anthology disc called Matchstickable Pictures of Ice in the Sun Men, or something like that. Some terrible title, which contains pretty much all of the Quo psychedelic era stuff, and most of Spare Parts and the first album. Yep, all that Quo, all that Pie stuff is well recommended. Personally, of course, I've had, guess what, the golden hour of Status Quo, Down the Dust Pipe. I bought that many years ago and still have a nice crackly copy of it. That's where I learned in my chair. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here. I've thoroughly enjoyed this one. We seem to have got through it in one piece. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that I'll be able to actually download it and put it on YouTube. Might be pushing it at that, but we did get through. Nobody got thrown off. We didn't get shut down. Hooray! So with the last swig from the now completely cold remains of tea and the vanished red top and blue starred bit at the bottom, specifically at the bottom. there we go. Thank you for being here. Good night. Everybody, take lots of care. Follow the data, not the dates. Don't do what the government does. Oops. Got political there for a moment. Take lots of care. Rupert, he's here. Okay, we will keep you posted. We're just about finishing, but it's over. Mark Kelly's Greasy Spoon, wonderful record. Thank you, everybody. Hope you all enjoyed it. I shall see you next time for whatever next time's stream is about. At this point in time, I have absolutely no idea, but by 2 weeks from now, should have something. Take care. Good night.